Okay, so here we are with a video just reviewing my Mjölner Cyclone Elementalist build. I'm just going to run a shape shore map here just for demonstration. It's not a crazy map, it's just got, I guess, boss has more hit points and there's Elder Reflect on it, but we're Elementalists, so we don't really care about that. Um, so the main goal of this build is to kind of just, map clear. Does a lot of AoE damage, obviously. Shield charge for mobility, so you want maps that are more wide open, less, cavernous or anything like that. Anything to restrict your path of movement. So, you want to be running the more wide open maps like the shore, tropical island, strand, channels, things like that. Um, what we use here is shield charges to get around. When we get into the bigger packs, like these abyss fissures here, you cyclone on the spot, and after just a couple of hits of your mallet procking, you're going to clean all that up. We scale our damage with Esh's Mirror. It's a shield that when you kill a shocked enemy, you gain 1 to 10 lightning damage. So you can imagine when you charge into these packs and you kill them all at once, you gain a really large buff to your lightning damage. It only lasts for 4 seconds, so either you have to keep killing stuff or just, kill it within that window before you run out of mobs. That's really important for your boss fighting. So when we don't have mobs, we use Vol Breach to supply us mobs. That way we can kill a bunch and keep that Eshmir stack high. Some other things that we use to buff our damage, we run Wrath Aura, we run Herald of Thunder Aura. Herald of Thunder gives us a nice little buff. We also put Innervate support in our Abyss helmet, the Light Poacher. How that works is when the green projectiles that you see shoot out, that comes from the helmet, when they kill a shocked enemy, they give us the Innovation support buff, which lasts for 4 seconds, and you can track that at the top. It's the blue lightning bolt with the green border. You can see how often the uptime is on that, and that's just coming straight from our helmet. The other buff we have is Elemental Overload. When we crit, we gain 40% more spell damage for 8 seconds. And again, that's a buff you can track the uptime at the top of the screen as we go through here just to see the uptime on that. We only have 5% crit in our build. It's enough to keep it up, so don't worry about that. So otherwise, I'm actually kind of just taking my time through this map just to clear up the Abyss Fissures. They're a good source of currency and maps in these troves. Also, they can lead to the Abyss Fissure, which might have or an Abyssal Depths, which might have a Lich inside, and they can drop stuff that are worth several exalts, so it's always worth to just check them out. Now I'm just scooting around here. I'm going to come up on the boss, and I want you to pay attention to how fast in the first second or two the boss's hit points drop while I have Eshmir stacks, and then that drop off in damage is almost immediate. So watch his health here. It shoots down. It's half. It's 2/3 gone. And now I'm not doing any damage because my stacks dropped off. So what we do is we open a Vol Breach. And ideally, you want to open the Vol Breach before you engage a boss. I kind of just did that to demonstrate how substantial that damage buff is from the Eshmir stacks. So typically when you're mapping, when you know you're coming up on a boss, you open the breach, and as it expands for a few seconds, that's enough to fill in with mobs. You go in and Cyclone on the boss, and you're going to be killing all the breach mobs at the same time. It's going to give you a big damage boost, and it's going to maintain that damage boost. So that's really important. And then here I'm just cleaning up the last Abyss Fissure here. I was actually kind of hoping the breach would collapse because it was kind of annoying to track the fissure with it open. The Vol Breach mobs, they don't give you experience. They don't give you any drops or any loot. And they don't give you Vol Souls either, so you can't chain Vol Breaches. What they do give you are kill credits. So if you have anything that is contingent on killed recently or something like that, that's going to help you out. Also, if you have a headhunter, you can steal the rare mobs nemesis buffs that they carry. So that's really cool too. But not many people have a headhunter, so that probably doesn't apply. And then here I'm just cleaning up with picking up some loot. So that's pretty much how the build plays. I like it. It's kind of fun. So we'll go check out the passive tree. Okay, so now we're just going to take a look at the passive tree for this build. As we mentioned, it's an Elementalist, so we're starting up here at the top in the Lich area. We're going to path out and pick up all the spell damage on our way out, which is really nice, helps out our build. Just jump over here and grab this life. And then we're actually going to come up through here and pick up all the elemental damage, lightning damage, elemental damage. This is also a resist node, and it also parks us right next to two other resist nodes. So you'll find as you swap your gear in and out, you might need to make up for lost resistances. It's nice to just be able to put a point into these if you need them, and then spec out when you don't. Again, it's just gear dependent, so it helps you with your flexibility a little bit. We were going to path up and grab our life. Again, we're life based, so we want to pick up life where we can. Come over here, and we're going to path up through the jewel socket because jewel nodes are great. And then that also brings us up to our lightning damage wheel over here. I would just focus on maybe just this left tree. This is all like damage stuff. Over here, maybe once you're in your mid to high 80s, you can pick up your shock effectiveness and shock chance, just to kind of like finish out your build a little bit. I also like to pick up the flask nodes just because we do use a Vessel of Vinctar. It's kind of like a one-time use flask. Once you use it, you're all out of your charges. So picking up effectiveness and duration on that helps out a little bit. But again, it's not necessary. So if you're looking to modify this build a little bit and you need to pick up some points from this tree, you might want to take out 3 right there. You also notice we're level 91 and we still have 4 passives unspent. Where did I take these out from? I'll never tell. So that's up for you to decide where you want to put them in. So we path over, we pick up Elemental Overload. We saw in the build how often that was proccing, right, when we were mapping. Uptime is almost 100%, and our crit chance on Arc is, what, 5%. So you don't need a lot of crit to keep this up. It's up all the time. We're hitting, like 10, 20, 30 mobs at a time sometimes. So you're not going to have to worry about that. It's also important to come over and pick up these. We need 412 strength in our build, so we're going to have to probably pick up all the mites that we can. Dex, we do support our Cyclone with Dex supports, and we use faster attacks on our shield charge. So we're going to need about 112 or so dexterity in the build. So I picked those up, you'll notice. I come down here, again, another little life cluster, which is great. Jewel socket, which is great. And then we path over, and now we're in the Templar area, which is really good for spell damage and area damage. So we're going to pick up all the spell damage and elemental here. We come over and pick up Amplify for increased area of effect and damage, because again we use Shock Nova. We're not worried about scaling Cyclone's damage. We just use it to hit with our Mjölner. So don't worry about the Cyclone damage. It's just utility. It's just a means of hitting with your weapon so that you can discharge or auto fire the spells inside of it. So if you're using something that's not an AoE, don't pick up these nodes. Just come over here instead. And then you want to pick up these spell damages for sure. Come out over here and down. Jewel socket. Life nodes is great. This parks us right outside the power charge. You'll notice we're also parked right outside the power charge right here. We're also parked right outside the endurance charges. So again, I like to think of this as a bit of a modular build. It's not rigid. You can play around. You can swap things in and out. I did play this with discharge in the Mjölner, so kind of like a Cospri's Malice type build. And it was a lot of fun. It worked out great. There's nothing wrong with it. And if you want to put those points in, you can do that. So we have 4. You can put in 2 power nodes and go for it. Or if you have like a Val's Devotion that converts power into endurance, you can pick up 1 of each. Or you can unspec out of your flask here and pick up all 4 charges. So keep that in mind if that's something you want to do. And then we come and path down here. Do not pick up Resolute Technique. You'll never deal a critical strike, which means you will never proc Elemental Overload. So stay away from that. A non-crit build normally, might pick up that, but this is not going to help us with our damage. And this is not about pathing efficiency. This is about picking up as much strength as we possibly can, which is why we kind of do like a double path. We come down here, pick up the life nodes. Barbarism's great too because it gives +1 to max fire res, and then like all elemental res there. So again, I really like this wheel for picking up just elemental res. We come and get a jewel socket and park next to an endurance if you want it. Kingsguard is a chest piece that a lot of people use with Mjölnir builds and discharge, so they'll spend expel an endurance charge and gain back life through that chest piece. Again, more life. This also parks us right next to a bunch of resistance. So effectively, these 4 points are 27 all res. That's really nice if you need it. It's there. You don't have to pass all the way over. Like if I needed these res You know, I'd have to spend points and get all the way over there, so that's no good. Um, I might do that if I make it to like 95 or 96. Maybe that's a stretch goal. I don't know. We also come down here. This is also really important. Born to Fight has 20 strength on it. Nice life cluster, which also has 10 strength. And at the very bottom, another 20 strength. So these points right here is like 50 strength. It's a good pickup to get for sure, since we're getting life that we wanted anyway out of it. And then we come over here, Jewel Socket, because of course, and then the Scion Life Wheel. This guy right here is 20 strength. I needed like 10 more in my build, and I figured, well, I could just pick up, like a 10 passive, but this has 20, and it's just as many points, so why not? We get a little bit more life from the strength on that. And then that just leaves our Ascendancy, so we went with Elementalist. The map we ran was an Ellie Reflect map. Thanks to this, we didn't die. You get 50% reduced reflected elemental damage taken. A lot of people say in 3.1 Abyss League that Ellie Reflect was nerfed, and so the Elementalist kind of dropped out of favor in the meta. One thing I did notice, especially in contrast to Harbinger League, the prior league in 3.0, was that in Harbinger, maps were worthless. The currencies that you got from Harbinger allowed you to upgrade a map or roll to another map in the same tier, and as a result, you could buy like Guardian maps for 5 chaos. They were nothing. They were so cheap. Um, 3.1 introduced, the War of the Atlas, so we've got now the Elder and Shaper influence on the maps. There's a lot more maps on the Atlas, and now people are participating in that mechanic of the end game, which means you have to have a much broader map completion and map pool to chase down those maps and defeat the influence on them when they show up. Uh, so I like Paragon of Calamity. It allows me to be more diverse with my map selection. I don't have to be afraid of unID'd maps. I don't have to roll away or sell off maps that I was unfortunate enough to land. Ellie Resist, right? So, or not Ellie Resist, excuse me, Ellie Reflect. So this just allows you to run almost any map. I think the only thing you really have to be worried about is like a double landing of like minus max res and Ellie weakness, or minus max res and Ellie reflect, or something like that. Even with Ellie weakness, if you have on one of your utility flasks, you just roll um, like curse immunity during flask effect, you might be okay there. So play up. I mean, you'll know the strength of your character and what you can handle and what you can't. It's very gear dependent, and as your gear gets better, it's less of a concern. We pick up Liege of the Primordial. This allows us to have 2 elemental golems. We get 40% increased lightning damage when we have a lightning golem out, which is great. Um, and you also get 100% increased effect of the buff that they grant you. So lightning golem grants us attack and cast speed. That's great for our shield charge and our cyclone. Um, we also use the flame golem. Their buff is a 20% increased damage. We double that because of this ascendancy, so we get 40% from our golem. Um, the other option there is an ice golem. So if you do play a crit build, maybe replace the fire golem with an ice golem and pick up crit buff from him. Pendulum of Destruction is every 10 seconds for 4 seconds we gain 100% increased elemental damage. Over here we can see that proccing goes up about like 2,000 tooltip there on the damage per second for our arc. Which also helps visualize what 100% increased elemental damage is. It's not doubling; it's just a factor in the calculation that helps out a bit. And then lastly, we just have Mastermind of Discord. We're paying attention to that middle attribute there. Damage penetrates 25% lightning res if you've used a cold skill in the past 10 seconds. You may have noticed me do that in the map. I'll self-cast a Frost Bomb real quick. It's only a 1/3 second cast once we factor in our gear and attributes and such. So it's a half-second cast time, but we come down here. It only takes us 1/3 of a second to actually get it off. So that's good. And we just do that purely to proc this. So you're going to get held up doing, like Abyssal Fissures and stuff like that. You're not going anywhere. You may as well just drop that real quick and get yourself an extra, 25% penetration. Alternatively, you can use a Tri-Elemental skill. Something like Discharge will actually give you penetration in all 3. You do have to self-cast it, though. You can't put it in here and just auto-proc the spell cast with the mace and think that it's procking this. It's not going to. So if I hit Frost Bomb, you can see it jump up to 28%, and you can test that. You can put, you can put like Discharge in your thing, Cyclone through somebody, and watch this not move. But if you self-cast it, you'll actually get all three, so that's nice. So that's the passive tree, and I've left it a little bit flexible so you can play around with how you want to play and what you find fun. So we'll go over the gear and gems next. Okay, so now we're just going to talk about the skills, gems, and gear for this build. So just starting with the base, we have Shock Nova and Arc. Those are two spells that we cast, and they're supported with Controlled Destruction. Alternatively, you can put in Lightning Penetration if you want to run like two supports in a single skill. Otherwise, you're free to choose whatever lightning skills you want, or any skill that has a tri-elemental tag on it. See Discharge at the top. Spell, AoE, Fire, Cold, Lightning. It's considered any of those elements, so you could put it in this mace. It would still cast it whenever you hit. Moving over to the helmet, which might need a little bit of explanation for anyone that hasn't used this before. Light Poacher has this on it, so it's Spirit Burst. It fires off 7 projectiles, kind of like in a starburst in all directions, and it pierces all targets. So with that in mind, we link Innervate support. Innervation grants us 8 to 145 lightning damage. So if the Spirit Burst kills anything that's shocked, we gain the Innervation buff. It lasts for 4 seconds, and the amount of lightning it adds is like about half of a Wrath or something like that, right? Wrath is 17 to 267, so that is not an insignificant amount by any means. We put in added lightning just for cleanup. We make sure that this helmet does enough damage to just finish off something within a pack and feed us that buff. It's entirely possible it still feeds us the buff just as much without the added lightning. I'll have to test that. But if you want the 2-socket version of this helmet, and it only gives you 2 others to play with, I would dump the added lightning. And I would keep Fizz to lightning support as the last one. That just converts half the physical over the lightning. Reason being, when you play really dense maps with a lot of mobs, this thing you can fire this off like 3-4 times in close succession. That's like 21 to 28 projectiles that pierce everything, and if you're dealing with physical reflect, you just probably killed yourself. That's no good. So Fizz to Lightning fixes that. In our shield, I'm just running Immortal Call and cast 1 damage taken, and a Vol Breach. Ideally, you want increased duration support on your Immortal Call, just so it lasts a little bit longer. I needed a space for Vol Breach, so that guy got sacrificed. I might even just swap out Added Lightning and put this back, but since I made this change, I haven't died, even with just the default Immortal Call. So I'm happy just to leave it as it is right now. I'll probably put it back just for safety, maybe later. In the chest, this is our Cyclone setup. So Cyclone, we're not concerned with the damage it deals, as far as we're concerned. We're just using it as a means to hit the enemy with our mace, so that our mace can do all the damage. So with that said, we don't need a 6 link. We just need a 5. 5 is fine. And if you don't even have a 5, you can still play this build. Don't cry about it. You're good. If you have less than 5, I would definitely keep Mana Leech support. This allows you to continue to channel Cyclone without ever dipping down in mana. So that one's needed. Fortify is very nice. It just gives you a little bit more survivability. If you had to cut one, that might do it. You can try removing it and just seeing how well you do in large packs. Faster attacks helps you cast or swing faster, so this procs more. And additional accuracy, which you probably need as well. Because we don't run Resolute Technique and we can't use like a Lacoste to cheat our hit rating, we do need to pick up accuracy. This is a great way to do it without needing to roll, like 300 plus accuracy on all your rares. This is all you need. That's fine. So with the last slot, we put in a cold skill that we can self-cast so that we can trigger our Ascendancy, which gives us 25 lightning penetration whenever we cast a cold skill. So that's why we put Frostbomb in there. We don't actually care about Frostbomb doing what Frostbomb does. We just care about casting a cold skill to trigger 25% lightning pen. And Frostbomb is pretty quick. It's about a third of a second. It's not really going to animation lock you too terribly. So there's that. And the Ascendancy buff lasts for 10 seconds. So the fact that this has a 2.5 second cooldown doesn't affect us. In the boots, Blasphemy support and Conductivity. That's really all you need. Just a 2-link. These are not support. They don't need to be linked at all. Just Herald Thunder and Summon Lightning Golem. Over in the gloves, Wrath and Summon Flame Golem, those also don't need to be linked, so this is really just a 2-link. Faster attacks with shield charge. So that's all the gems. I would recommend, I mean, like, you can put these in where the helm is pretty specific, the mace is pretty specific, chest is specific. These you can move around wherever you want. If coloring is a problem for you, you know, you have like strength boots, by all means, put the reds there, and this is an energy shield anyways, that you're more favored to get blues on this anyway. Um, I would recommend that you keep faster attacks and shield charge in your gloves, and that is because ideally you probably want gloves that are rolled with Essence of Insanity. That gives socketed gems 16% more attack and cast speed. So with your shield charge in there, it's just even more scoot power across the map, and it's good. So with that, we'll talk about the items here. Mjolnir, it's kind of like the point of the build, along with another unique or two in here. So this one is not very flexible. I recommend having this. It's going to auto cast your spells for you. I corrupted mine just to have the lightning damage leeches life. By no means do you need to do that. Don't feel like you have to go out and spend like an exalt or whatever someone's charging for that. If you do take it upon yourself to do it yourself, like I did, I went through like 30 of these maces to get that. So be prepared for that. It might just be better to buy it. Light Poacher, it's an amazing helm. Just about everyone's using it for all of their builds in 3.1. I don't know what their availability will be in the future, right? It might be a league restricted drop, so maybe only through divination cards or something. I don't know. Try and find something else that synergizes with this build. If you need something to proc your Innervate, maybe your Herald of Thunder would do the fix if you link those two up. Maybe your Herald of Thunder will do enough to clean up mobs and still feed you that buff well enough. The shield, this is also another superstar of the build. Esh's Mirror, it adds 1 to 10 lightning damage for each shocked enemy you've killed recently. Recently is a terminology in this game, meaning within the last 4 seconds. This shield is everything. So the faster you can kill and the faster you can move on to the next pack, the better you can build this up within that 4-second window, and the better you can sustain your buffs. So if it takes you long to move from pack to pack, by the time you engage the next pack, you've already lost your buffs and you're starting from scratch. It's not really doing you any good. This is why this is just a mapping build, right? If we were killing a boss, this shield wouldn't do us any good. If we were doing like Shaper, this does nothing for us during a Shaper fight or during a Guardian fight or something like that. This is just a map build, so this is where this shield really shines, and we're using this tool for that exact purpose. Rare boots. You just want, you know, the most move speed you can get, cold or any other elemental res that you need. Strengthen in if you need them. Biggest hurdle with this build is that you need a lot of strength, a lot of int, and those things are suffixes, so are resistances. So to get your attributes and your resistances, they all compete for the same 3 slots on a rare. So keep that in mind. It could be a little bit tough to get what you need. That's why we invest so heavily in the passive tree for attributes and resists. Rare ring, it's just, you know, attributes and some strength roll. I'll note that it does have 12 life gain for each enemy hit by your spells. That's a new Shaper fix. It's really nice. It synergizes with this build because we hit everything with our spells. In Presence is a new 3.1 Ami. It's not League specific. It's War of the Atlas expansion specific. So it drops off Elder. It comes in different flavors, different elements, and a Chaos version as well, I believe. It gives us the all attributes that we need. Added lightning damage, max life, lightning res, those are all great. 100% reduced conductivity mana reservation, that's really important. It allows us to roll with Wrath and Herald of Thunder and get a conductivity curse, which is really, really nice. It also has that weird proc on it, where you see that dark circle around your character. What that does is it's Malignant Madness. It slows enemies by 10% and reduces their damage by 10%. So it's kind of like a pseudo temp chains curse or something. Move down here, Doriani's Invitation. It's a unique belt that drops off at Ziri, so, you know, like day 2 or 3 of the league, there might not be many of these, but after a week, they're everywhere, and they're usually really cheap, so, like, maybe a Chaos 2 or 3, I don't know, depending on the roll. So you can pick those up really easy. It gives us strength, lightning damage, fire and cold res, lightning damage leeches life, 10% chance to charge during a flask, everything we want, right? It's great. Gloves, these are very, very expensive. I was actually just playing around with them just to see how they work. I don't recommend them. I price checked these when they dropped for me, and the Lightning version was the most expensive of all the elements, and they were like 100 chaos for the cheapest or something like that. So I'm glad I got to test them out for free. I will probably just be going back to this guy real quick. But I wanted to let you know it's an option out there. I killed them. They drop off the Pale Court if you don't know. It was a league challenge to kill them, so I killed them. That's what it dropped, and it synergized. So I thought, yay, I'll try it out. Likewise, Valaco Sign, it kind of just synergizes with the build. You know, we get increased damage with hits against shocked enemies. We do that all the time. Increased lightning damage. It gives us leech and chance to shock. Lightning res. It's got everything you need. It does have a drop restriction. It's restricted to a temp league that is no longer in existence. So you can only get these from divination cards and maybe even a Zena map mod. Um, there's very few in supply, but it's not really part of a big meta build like a Brutus-led Sprinkler would be. So you could maybe pick these up for like 20, 30 chaos or something like that. But again, you don't need it. You can get all the same damage from this thing and even like leech from the new Shaper rares, which I'll go over in a quick second. So I believe that just leaves Impulse's Broken Heart. This is a really nice chess piece. I like it. It feeds us everything that we're dealing with here. You got life, increased damage if you've shocked recently, increases your effective shock. Shocked enemies explode, and you're unaffected by shock. Unaffected by shock is really nice because you can run a Vessel of Vinctar, and even though you see the debuff, you don't actually get affected by it. So it says we're shocked, and it says we take up to 50% increase. We're not. We are shocked, but we don't get debuffed by shock, so we don't take increased damage. I like the chess piece a lot. It goes well with this and just everything else that we've got here. Um, so that's that. Flasks, you know, life flask. We're a life-based build. We need that. We need bleed removal for, you know, the rare packs that we go into that bleed us. Stead Knight I really like in Abyss League. You follow the Abyssal Fissures, they open up, a bunch of rares jump out. We don't have anything to tank for us or to taunt. So if they jump out into a smoke cloud, your survivability goes way up. I like this for this league specifically for that purpose. Vessel of Vinctar, where you went with the damage penetration one. There's like 3 others. The other one that you might want to pick up is lightning damage added to spells. So make sure it's added to spells, not attacks. That's another one. Don't buy the wrong one. Wise Oak. Again, Lightning Pen, provided that Lightning is our highest uncapped resistance. So here's your resistances. These are the capped versions. These are the uncapped values. This is what the flask is taking into consideration. Lightning has to be the highest. Keep in mind, Vessel of Vinctar adds 50 to your Lightning res. So just pop all your flasks at once and just make sure that Lightning is the highest. It might not be the highest, just standing in your hideout, but once you pop Vinctar, it probably is. And if it's not, just fix your resist up to be that. And then lastly, we just have a Quicksilver Flask. We want movement speed. We want to move around as fast as possible so we can kill more quickly, which helps us feed into this guy, which increases our damage across the board. Edge stacks apply to our helm, to our spells, to our Cyclone, to our Herald, like everything. It just increases all of our damage. It's fantastic. So those are the items there. Again, I recommend these gloves instead of these. If you wanted to try out like Malagaro's Restraint, it works well with this build. All of our shocks are reflected back to us, so we're shocked, which gives us increased movement speed, and it's nice. It's just a nice boost to speed. It does give increased damage while shocked, but to be honest, I would have to take off this belt and then fix those missing stats with probably taking off this ring. So I would lose the 60% increased lightning damage that this ring affords me. So really, I'm just picking that up for the speed. If you can make it work, feel free to try it out. Shaped rares are really good for us as well. So this is new in 3.1. The Shaper rares have a lot of spell synergy to them. So this guy, 30% increased spell damage, chance to shock, and then added damage against shocked enemies. That's really huge for our build. Level 22 Herald of Thunder skill is something you can roll, which means we could take this gem out of our build, which means, hey, I can move Wall Breach down here and then fix my increased duration on my cast when damage taken. That would be really handy for me. So I might do that. I might get a rare ring for this slot that has that. Amulets. Lightning damage leeches life, and if you look at the roll on that, it rolls to 0.3 to 0.5, which is a lot if you consider all these uniques are just 0.2, right? 0.2, this is corrupted with 0.2, so that's like 2.5 uniques. That's pretty good. Items and gems have 15% reduced attribute requirements. That's really huge for such a build because we need like 412 strength. So if you can't get all the attributes and you're using a rare Ami, trying to get one that has that just to help you out with everything else, and then you can probably make it all work. And just some alternative uniques. If you're just gearing up and you need some help with your attributes, Astramentus is like 100 to everything. It's usually pretty cheap. False Devotion, just if you're using Discharge. Again, I still wouldn't recommend it though. It's very expensive and doesn't provide you anything. I actually played Discharge even without False Devotion. It still did very well. I was generating power charges with Remor's Banquet. You gain a power charge on a non-crit strike, and then you lose all on crit strike. I was like always at max power anyway, even with that condition. So you put on that ring over here, and you can play with Discharge if you'd like to, and you're always adding power and popping off. If you wanted to convert that power after you explode into endurance and do that, you could use this, but it's very expensive and doesn't really fit with our build. It's not perfect. People that use a Kingsguard, where upon consuming or lapsing an endurance charge will feed you life, this is much more appropriate. And then this I actually kind of just singled out. It converts 40% lightning to cold damage. So if anybody wanted to kind of play around with some sort of something that was lightning based, but also like conversion based or something, maybe try seeing if you can make this thing work with something. We're just mapping with this build, and everything pretty much dies almost instantly. So we don't have time to, freeze enemies and then shock them and then hit them for even more. We're fine. So don't worry about that. So that's all the gear. I think I'm just going to wrap up real quick with just how I leveled and what I feel, like the purpose of this build is versus some other builds. So then just to wrap up on how I leveled this build and kind of just my overall thoughts or approach to this build and attitude towards builds in general. Um, if you would look at this tree here, how you level this, I actually couldn't tell you because I didn't level it. I level all my builds with Abras Hooves. You can put these on at level 12. Same with Doedre's Tenure, also level 12. It gives you a huge spell damage boost. And then as you level up, you just swap out your one-handers. So you put on something like the Screaming Eagles for increased movement speed. You run around and you just kill everything with the fire proc from the boots. It procs every time you take a step. So all you have to do is move and you've done damage. So you just run circles around enemies and continue on. Very, very fast build to play. The boots can be quite expensive. So as an alternative, maybe try doing like a Poet's Pen build. Those are also now being adopted as like universal leveling builds. You maybe grab one or two of those guys and you just run around and these things fire off like crazy. So if you are interested in an Abras Who's build, I would highly recommend looking up Cute Dog. He's a streamer. You've probably heard of him way more than you've ever heard of me. In fact, no one's heard of me. So Cute Dog, he's a good guy. He's got a build guide on that on YouTube. If you visit his Twitch channel, he even has chat commands for all of his builds and all of his videos that he's made. You can do !Abras in his Twitch chat. It'll give you the link on YouTube if you can't find it on YouTube. And it's very informative. He talks about it for 20, 30, 40 minutes or such. You basically just grab your Templar nodes over here, your Witch nodes over here. You want to focus on crit with Abras Hooves, all right? And you travel down this middle path, and you come over to the shadow area, and you pick up the crits here. Crit, 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 and elemental damage, and then maybe branch down for life if you want it. And if you really wanted to, you could put increased elemental damage, but this is all stuff you'll have to spec out of. So the more you spend in, the more you'll have to spec out. You can also pick up this life wheel. Since you're coming down this way, you can pick up the life wheel, and then you're right next to the spell crit wheel, which is really big. And if you wanted to, you can pick up the crit multi over here. That's basically it. I mean, you're pretty much done investing points in Abras Who's in your mid-50s, which is right around the time you are hopefully doing your Blood Aqueducts or your Harbor Bridge. You run these maps over and over and over again. You get to them around like 54ish, 55ish, and you leave when you're like 72. You go kill Katava, you finish up these acts, and then you're around like 60 or 75 or 76, and you're mapping. And that's it. So a build like this, I mean, you come out, you pick up the witch area stuff, you pick up your area stuff for the Abrass Hooves, the crit for the Abrass Hooves, you pick up just your life for survivability, maybe some power charges if you're using wands that feed you power charges during your Abrass build. You come down here, again, the area, the elemental, the life, more spell damage if you want it, and you come over and you grab crit, 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 and some life. That's it. And I level every single build like that. The thing I've always noticed with build guides is that you go check out anyone's build guide on the forum, and some of the first comments are, hey, how do you level this build? Or, hey, I'm struggling with this build. What do I need to do to fix it? Usually the author of the build will have different talent trees for different levels. So they'll say, this is what your tree should look like at level, at level 20. Here's what it should look like at level 30, at level 50, at level 60, at level 80. You can throw all of that out the window if you just adopt a single leveling spec for every character that you play, right? If you play every league and you play 5, 6 builds, well, if you master one really efficient leveling spec and you can apply that to all of your builds, then it doesn't matter if you're playing something that's completely out of your element. If you're playing a summoner for the very first time and you have no idea how summoners work, and you're slogging through the leveling process because you don't know what gems and what gear you're supposed to keep up with, you avoid all of that if you just play something like Abrass Hooves or something with the Poet's Pens. I'm sure there's guides out for that these days. So keep that in mind. Yes, Abrass Hooves are a luxury item. They are quite expensive. For me personally, I buy these as soon as I can in league. They are the first major purchase I make in every new league, because in the first week you can pick these up for like 40 chaos, and then they go up to an exalt and a half, 2x. If someone makes a build out of them, they can sometimes be, I think in Breach or Legacy League, they were like 4 or 5 exalts. Crazy how expensive these can get. But beginning of a league, they're always affordable. Like 40 chaos, when you're doing chaos recipes and blood aqueducts as you level, you're going to get that. So this is a very good investment, because this is an investment that will apply to every single character you ever make and level. It's well worth 40 chaos. It's well worth 10 exalts, if you ask me. I mean, like, it just makes leveling so quick, so easy, so painless. You never have to worry about anything. You don't even need a tabula rasa when you have these things. You don't. You just don't. So put them on at 12. You support it with Screaming Eagles, something like Storm Prisons. Once you get those, they feed you power charges and you're critting more. It's all good. These are nice. These are the Prophecy Screaming Eagles. You put them on at 32, and they give you 15% increased movement speed if you've killed recently. So if you have 2 of these, you're running around with like 50% increase total, right? Each one giving you 25%, and it's just really, really nice. If you want help with bosses, I would recommend like a Scorching Ray spell totem setup, supported with something like Ignite and Faster Casting. You can throw that in any 4-link, put them in your gloves if you want. If you do have a tabula and you want to maximize that 6 socket, throw in like a Herald of Ice and a Herald of Thunder and support those. The boots themselves, when you first start, not Ice Bite, that's a little bit later, but like add a Lightning, add a Cold, something like Controlled Destruction, or even Elemental Prolift or something like that, something to just spread your Ignites around, whatever. And then as you get there, Ice Bite's going to feed you some more Frenzy charges and stuff. When you do get to Blood Aqueducts, I highly recommend Martyr of the Innocence, or Martyr of Innocence, I should say. It's a staff that's worth absolutely nothing. You can pick it up for like an Alk. No one cares about this thing. It gives you a ton of flat added fire to spells, which helps out your boots a lot. It's a nice two-hander, I think. So that's just how I level. And just overall in general, this, I've mentioned before, it is a mapping build. That's all it aims to be. I know a lot of people out there probably think it's not viable, it's viable, whatever you want to label it as. It aims to do one thing, and I feel it does it quite well. I've played mapping builds in the past, and I know that this is not the best that you could ever have. I played, the Queen of the Forest Wander with the Piscators in 3.0, and with the Vol Power Siphon, I had a Culling Strike Piscators. I was sprinting around maps, AoE clearing well off screen, using an Eshmir. I know exactly how well that can go. This was kind of just like a janky, what can I do as a lightning build type thing. I really had fun with this build. Simply enjoy playing it. My league starter in 3.1 was an Essence Drain build. Did not enjoy it. Yes, it's a capable build. It's good for, as a league starter with not a lot of items to support it. It scales well. Boring. I was so bored with it. And it's not any fault for the build itself. It's a very reliable build. It's very proven. I just did not enjoy it, and I had to get rid of it. While I was playing it, I was in the midst of crafting like a +3 chaos staff. I ended up landing +2 to fire spells, and I regaled, got +1 to all socketed skills. So I was like, okay, well, I now accidentally have a +3 fire staff. My next character was an SRS build. Again, very reliable, very proven. They scale well, does very well with content. Oh my god, I was so bored. I could not stand playing it. I've never really played an SRS before. I'm glad that I've gone so long without playing it because I don't think I'll ever return to it. It's just not what I enjoy. Um, I've had a lot of fun with this build. I will continue to have fun with this build. And even though it's not as capable as other builds I've had, it is fun and it brings me back to the game. You know, so for whatever builds are worth in quote unquote viability or what they can tackle, um, you gotta have fun playing it. Otherwise, what is it really worth to you? So for that reason, when I want to do Uber Labs, I build a lab farmer that can do it that I have fun with. When I need a mapping character, I build something that can do that. When I want something to farm endgame bosses, I build a character specifically for that. Uh, last league or two, it's been Glacial Cascade Mine. It's broken. They melt bosses like crazy. I can't believe GGG didn't fix that with 3.1. And as long as that remains in the game, that's all I'm going to use to kill endgame bosses. That's all I really care about. I walk in, detonate my mines, and collect my loot. Um, so that's my approach there. I level all of those again with Abrass Hooves. I've got a buddy that uses Poet's Pens. We both have a blast playing our builds. They're quick, they're easy, they're mindless. It gets you to the end game that you want to be playing your build at, and that's it. So if you guys want to give this a shot, you want to have fun. I had fun. I hope you do too. And if you don't, that's okay too. There's a ton of builds in this game. I'm sure you can find something you enjoy elsewhere, if not here. So with that in mind, I'll let you go out and play, and take care.